We love supporting and promoting the creators of musical theater throughout the world, and we would love to have your support as well. Go to musicaltheaterradio.com and click on the Become a Patron button, because a supportive community is a strong community. Welcome back to another episode of Be Our Guest here on Musical Theater Radio. I am your host, as always, Jean-Paul Jovanoff. At this point, I usually let you know a little bit about my guest, but when you go to their website, all the homepage says is playwright, composer, and a few other things. Intrigued? You know I am. Let's get right into finding out more about our mysterious guest, Preston Max Allen. Preston, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you for having me, Jean-Paul. What a delight to be here.
No problem. There is so much mystery now about you. You know, you go to that page and you're like, who is this? Why aren't we finding out right away who they are? So we are going to find out right now a little bit about you. So I always start my interview the same way. We find out who Preston is in 30 seconds. So we need the 30-second bio of Preston.
Okay, great. I am kind of foremost a musical theater writer, so we'll alleviate some mystery. But I also do playwriting, and I write television and film, and I watch a lot of television and film. I live in Chicago with the most beautiful cat in the world, and we watch a lot of musicals, and we FaceTime a lot with family, and we are right now slipping a lot on ice, and that is kind of me in 30 seconds.
I'm guessing the ice part is seasonal and probably doesn't need to go on the website all the time.
No, the slipping on ice is a January specific problem. Okay. It is apparently currently all consuming. I cannot step outside here in Chicago for the time being. It's a little treacherous.
Awesome. So when you were growing up, were you always into musicals, or was that something you discovered a little bit later in life?
I was maybe too into musicals, is how I can phrase it. So I was very young singing Don Quixote in Chicago, like truly like 6 to 8 were those years for me. So my father loves musicals, and my mom is also really into them. I'm the youngest of 3, and all my siblings also enjoy theater, not to the extent that my dad and I do. But my dad is from New York and would see musicals all the time as a kid. And my mom is from Chicago, and they moved to Texas when I was a wee baby. And so I was raised in Texas, but with the Chicago, New York energy. And so because my dad couldn't see musicals all the time like he used to, they filled our home. Everything we listened to was theater. Every trip we took was usually to see musical theater. I actually didn't know that plays were on Broadway until my late teens, because my dad didn't want us to be distracted by the potential of seeing them when we could see musicals. So that was very much I knew Eponine's entire track when I was 8. I was just running around the house being like, babysitters, listen to me sing on my own. So that was very much my youth. And I thought I wanted to perform musical theater. So I did a lot with our local theater, Casa Manana, that did these big youth production things. So I was doing, Joseph in Oklahoma, and a little bit what I was running into, which moved me more into the writing space, was that I wasn't able to audition for some of the roles I wanted to. Kind of as a youth, I wanted to audition for Benjamin in Joseph, and I was quite young. There was literally no reason for me not to be able to audition for Benjamin. They were like, no. At that time, they were like, you're a girl, and I was like, well, we'll see about that. But that became kind of a clash with my performing career into my 20s. So I did kind of stop performing just because it wasn't compatible with my physicality and emotionality and ability to process those things. And I moved to behind the scenes stuff, but it was always massively a part of my life.
Because when you think Texas, you always think, musical theater, but what's that like down there? Is there pockets, or, because I know there's theaters obviously in the big ones like Dallas and Texas and Dallas and San Antonio and et cetera, but what's it like down there? Is it just pocketed?
Well, I was in Fort Worth, and Fort Worth is close to Dallas, the DFW area. So there, it was city-esque. There were good theaters. There was access to theater. And yeah, and so I was kind of near the main one. So I would have friends who would travel from other areas to Casa or to do stuff at Bass Hall and stuff like that. But like Bass Hall, which was, you know, pretty close, is still like the big touring house. So there was a lot of access. And as far as like the culture of it, my family's very liberal, very Jewish. And so that was like just the energy that I had. And so it was very contrasting with the energy around me, but I was also very lucky to go to like schools and be in community where it wasn't a big problem. Like kind of we were met where we were at. Obviously there was some disconnect in many ways, but yeah, I had kind of a very like, I was always around kind of other theater kids. And then in high school, for a couple of years, I did end up at an art school. So my most recent memories of Texas were being, you know, surrounded by people who felt and performed the same way that I did. And so yeah, I was fairly well taken care of. I was, you know, as a queer person, stressed out by being in Texas. So I did graduate a year early. I arranged that for myself, and I left a year early. So I'm making it sound utopian. It was there were some fancy notes, but no, yeah, I was very lucky in many ways. Looking back to have found the community that I did.
Nice. It's always important to find, and I totally understand. It could be more difficult for, you know, theater lovers outside of the main central areas of Texas. Not to stereotype Texas the way it is, but you know, that's points, you know, out of any non-urban area, right? It becomes a lot less. Yeah, because like I said, I grew up, like when we were talking off, I grew up an hour north of Toronto, which is cows and corn for neighbors, and you know, we had our rednecks up there, and that's just a fact. But you know, you get out of the city, it's less. So
yeah, it took many, you know, we had many trips out of the city, many friends who lived out of the city, and I definitely would have had a very different experience out there and a lot less access to. I maybe would have graduated 2 years early had I been out there. But you know, respect to all cultures.
Exactly, and it's not right or wrong; it's just different, right?
Very, yeah, very.
It's just different. So you went to did you go to do theater after high school?
I was torn between going to USC's film school or going to Columbia College for musical theater, because Columbia didn't, I think they might have changed things, but at that point they did an audition. So I was too late I was kind of set on writing. I was too late to audition for any programs. And that was not my track, but then I was cast as one of the leads in She Loves Me. I was cast as Alona Ritter, who Jane Krakowski played in the revival. And to clarify, I'm a transgender man. So some of the it's helpful information if you don't have quite that piece. Yeah. So I was like, oh my God, I'm God's gift to theater. Obviously, I got this role at this art school. I must be really good. And then I got nominated for a Betty Buckley Award, which is the, you know, it's the channel to the Jimmys now. So it is the like award ceremony of the DFW area. So I was like, stop the presses. If I don't perform, it'll be, you know, a blow to the world of the arts. So I did go to Columbia College for performance. I dropped that fairly quickly, the musical theater performance part of my major. I did a lot of focus in personal writing, like I wrote behind the scenes a lot, and I did a lot of comedy stuff with Second City, and I did some ASL stuff. But the musical theater performance, I fairly quickly realized that there was a reason that it, you know, had not been my initial plan going into senior year. And that's why I like missed the audition, probably because I should have. But, you know, all of it was very formative, and it taught me a lot about why I write and who I write for, to have done so much in performance.
Yeah, and it's the experience you get, right? It's not necessarily you whether you graduate or good or bad or whatever. It's the experience and what you take from it, right? Yeah. And that's the key for. So what's there? I'm always curious with people. When you were going out, you obviously wanted to do theater and the arts. Is there anything else you ever wanted to do that growing up, like if you hadn't gone the arts direction, you would have gone into this instead?
You know, I'm very lucky in many ways, in many ways, to be able to, especially to work in the arts, because like, no, I didn't have a good plan. I've had many jobs throughout, like we all know, working in theater, there's a moment where you come at peace, and there's absolutely no failure in other jobs. I've had many throughout my life. And the one where I kind of went, oh, I see myself digging deeper into this was I worked at Trevor Project for a little bit, which is a crisis line for LGBTQ youth. And that was kind of the first time I was like, oh, this space and this world is something that I would love more education and more experience in. So I've thought about that. And getting, if I went back to school, it would probably be for psychology, social work. So that was kind of the first time, because until then I was interested in those things, but kind of, the narcissistic way of writing about it without doing any research and being my own psychology and my own experiences. But yeah, that was a moment where I was kind of taken outside of myself, and it was very formative for me. And I think I will do more of that research, whether or not it's going back to school. It is more of a focus of mine in kind of a more intense way.
Very nice. Very nice. So you went to post-secondary, or some of it. And what did you do after that?
I was on track to do the Second City Conservatories. I was in the improv one, and I was in the musical theater one. But the day before graduation, because I graduated also a year early from college, and I didn't intend to graduate a year early from college like I did high school. I accidentally cleared a bunch of classes trying to do the Disney program, but I accidentally cleared the whole year. I was like, well, now I leave. I shouldn't pay another year of college. But I really wanted to put a show on before I graduated. So really quickly, because I didn't realize I was graduating, until a month before, I talked to the student group, and we threw together this student theater produced version of my show, We Are the Tigers, which I'd been writing throughout college, just doing, a read once a year in a classroom. And I was like, well, I wanted to do a show. I'm graduating. Let's go time. So we did that. And it was the day before graduation, we did the reading of it. And then I went into the improv conservatories, and I was working at Trader Joe's, and I was kind of looking at that being my next several years. But I really wanted to work on Tigers, and I wasn't able to find a pathway for development in Chicago. And there's been a lot of work on it, but at the time, fairly self-admitted, for the city, that pipeline just doesn't really exist for musical theater development of the same 29-hour structure that I found through programs in New York. So basically, I was being told, rent a theater and do the show. And my very good friend who I'd been to high school with, who had done shows with me in my art school, was in New York. And I called him and I was like, if I go to New York, can you help me develop the show? And he said, yes. And so I tried to see if I could get a job, and I accidentally got a job overnight. So I had to leave Chicago overnight and come and work at Soho Playhouse for what ended up being several years. So I was there, and that was my job. And then we did a reading in November. I moved to Chicago in September. And then in November, we did this reading of Tigers for the first time in terms of the world of its development after college. And a producer was in the theater that night who my friend had invited, and she took it on, did an industry reading, and then that's kind of how that went. So that was, a right person in the right room situation for this reading my friend and I put together, using a backstage coupon and a rental theater we found, doing, Googling, and a friend of mine from Soho Playhouse directed it. And so it was a very grassroots effort. It was very, very fun. And I'm still friends with a lot of those people. They're very incredible performers and people and artists. So it was a great way to start being in New York. It was kind of a magical, very stressful, but very magical experience with that show that has certainly taught me so much. Highs and lows all around over what ended up being the next several years of development on that one.
Well, I'd love to take it right back to the beginning of what is the impetus for writing a cheerleading serial killer musical? What happened to you that made you?
Well, I mean, honestly, what happened to me, I didn't realize kind of a lot of what I was doing, we'll get back to exactly what started, but a lot of what I was doing ultimately was I, didn't transition until I was 24. Yeah. And the show is largely about how hard it is to be a high school girl. So I was definitely channeling a lot of how hard I thought it was to be a high school girl throughout the development of that show. Yeah, I love horror. Like I just, as a baseline, love horror. At the time, I was actually writing a lot for screen in high school, kind of when the idea came about. But I was realizing I had the ability to put up theater. So I was changing a lot of my ideas from film to theater to be able to stage them. And this was one of them that was kind of looking at being a horror movie. But then we did She Loves Me, which is a show with 2, I think, female leads. And these arts programs tend to have a lot of people who are not cisgender men in them. And so, the show couldn't cast them. They were just these incredibly talented people who couldn't, shine in our main stage musical. And so I was like, oh, I would love to do write a show, especially for young women in these programs, to have as many roles as possible and also to be close to age and be dealing with things close to age. So I was able to find that in what the horror movie I was writing was. And I really love, anyway, like fundamentally, I love like breaking down archetype. It's just like my favorite thing to do across all genres. And so for this, what it became was, it's horror, it's very archetypal. Every character kind of maps a horror archetype. And the next level, especially what music offers this piece, is, music goes deeper. Music is emotional. Music is your inner monologue. So I was able to really very excitingly explore and break down those archetypes. What are these girls actually going through using the music side of it? So it did end up blending really well and creating a different kind of piece, certainly than what I started with, which is just a slasher film, but I got to really know the characters and really shape their emotional landscapes. And that was really cool, and created a kind of genre blend that is complicated to work with, certainly, but I continue to kind of plug away at, and has very thankfully found an audience that got what I was going for. So,
very nice. So I was reading about it. The first workshop was in 2013. It hit Off Broadway in 2019, and obviously it had stuff in between. I know you had the workshop, went to LA, I believe, and you had a performance there, and then it went to Off Broadway. What did you see change wise from that first workshop that kind of surprised you? That kind of modified?
There were a lot of bones that were very similar in that workshop, but I just, as a writer, my abilities and my experiences and my wants for my own work change. So there was a lot of what really happened was I got more interested in the reality of what this experience would be like between LA and New York. Mm-hmm. So the LA one was more heightened, and it ended more abruptly. And there's a finale that's very much about theme and meaning in the one that ended up Off Broadway, and this didn't have that. It was a little bit more of like a horror musical with some moments of emotionality. And then, what we did was really add more of that. Like, what is this actually like? While also, of course, it's always going to be removed from reality. It's always going to be campier. It's always going to be heightened. So really working on that tone of how deep can we go? How serious can we go? How heartfelt can we go? But also, how much can we push, the genre in terms of what's really fun about it? Yeah. So that was a lot of what we were working with, and a lot of what's always been kind of the delightful challenge of this piece.
So how was your experience moving the show to Off Broadway? Now you don't have to use names or anything like that, because I've talked with people who had a fantastic experience moving to Off Broadway, and I've had other people who've had not such a great time moving to Off Broadway and getting their show because of whatever reason, producers or the publicity or whatever. How was your experience?
Yeah, I mean, it was. The people involved were wonderful and put a lot of heart in the show, and we had an incredible team, an incredible cast, and we moved really quickly. In August, I had done a fundraiser for Musical Theater Factory, which what I had thought was going to be the last presentation of this piece for the foreseeable future. We did a concert with a lot of people who had helped develop it, kind of celebrating the show and celebrating Musical Theater Factory, which develops new works and which I've done a lot of work with. And I was like, that's it. And a friend of mine had brought a producer, Sasha Gelman, who ended up producing the piece, kind of seeing if he would be interested in the show. And he was, and that was August. And then the show went up in February. So the turnaround between seeing the concert at the end of August and getting it off Broadway in February was real fast. So the yes ands that needed to happen were, incredibly speedy. And like we had a magic team who was able to put that together with their skills and their dedication. And that was beautiful. Obviously, the challenges of being a new musical theater writer are difficult to get people to trust your work and see your show. And a negative review from the wrong entity can turn away audiences. And what really sucks about that is it keeps the show from reaching the audiences that would really enjoy it, because one person told people they didn't get it. And so that was difficult. That was really hard to work with, especially because once certainly the album came out and the show was able to get more out in the world, people, especially the audience the show was written for, high school, college, the show was kind of written to be done at high schools and colleges. It really started reaching those audiences, and a lot of those people were connecting with the show exactly as I dreamed of. So that was really cool to see, and that was, I guess, the bright side that came out of my being like, oh, it's a shame that happened, and we had this wonderful show that would have meant so much to so many people if it just could have gotten out there more, and then it did in post. So that was very healing to see the response. And we're still kind of trying to get it into the world. There's still a lot of people who don't know it exists, and many of whom it's not for, and many of whom it is. And a challenge with this show is there are audiences who want to take the characters less seriously and have it be sillier and goofier and campier. But it's always my goal to put the characters first, and to put the fact that I do take these characters with a certain level of responsibility first. So balancing that, like I've said, it continues to be the thing. And when we were off Broadway, we were just faced with kind of everyone's opinions on that, and everyone's opinions on being presented with a new musical about 9 young women, and the level of seriousness with which audiences were willing to take 9 young women. And I have feelings on that, and the tolerance that audiences have to take young men, kind of famously in, teenage situations that, get a different maybe level of seriousness than we were given at the time. But I will reserve that for my Twitter account. I can be a little more direct about how I feel about representation, psychology, and teen representation on stage.
Well, we'll move away from that for a second then, and talk about the critics and the double-edged sword that they are. It's terrible and great, because where do people, what choice do you have to go to? Well, that's not so much true now with the social media and the internet, because now you get everybody's opinion, and that's a whole different problem unto itself. But yeah, the critics are the gatekeepers, and if they like it, that's great. If they don't, that's terrible. But you can't control that, unfortunately. And I'm glad you found a life afterwards with the show, because, like you said, it's not for everybody, and that's okay. But it will find its niche and its people to love it. So that's a fantastic attitude to take away from it.
It took some time, because my therapist had read the review and was like, the big review was like, don't read it. It's not helpful and it's quite mean. And on a personal level, that was sad, but also on a level of someone who likes musical theater, that's hard to hear, like in terms of what you're keeping a new artist, a new work, a show with female representation, with queer representation, like suddenly a limb has been cut off from that show's ability to get into the world because of a cruel skew on someone's opinion. So that, I didn't jump back from that, but I was able to connect back to what was so wonderful about the show and the people who worked on it. And next time I'll do that faster. Next time I'll be less, young brooding playwright and more, F this angle.
You have more gravitas now. You have more life behind you.
Right? I do. And I can also certainly say that the show is every show is flawed. But actually, the theme of the show is you cannot be perfect, or you'll be so miserable it will drive you to insanity. So that, I try to reconnect to that.
Nice. So once you got that, what did you work on next after that, and what have you been working on?
So throughout Tigers, like, it would go on and off. So I was building other shows. during that. Right now, like the main musical that I work on that I started with my writing partner for that show in 2017 is called Agent 355. A movie just came out called The 355, which is about a group of women who are spies. And the musical that we are writing is the exploration of where that title came from. And so Agent 355 was referred to in a letter of the Culper Spy Ring as being like integral to a mission. The Culper Spy Ring was the first spy ring in the American Revolution that contributed to winning the war. So, and they've named who all the other spies are, but not this one woman. 355 means woman. And so this musical is basically a rock band exploration of exploring different women who were connected to the ring and how they each might have been the 355 that the letter's referring to. So it's less of a, whodunit, more of a celebration of the contributions of these people to this ring that went uncredited largely, or that all got kind of lost to this very sexualized myth that is on the internet. And so that's been really fun. My book writer and dramaturg, Jessica Kahkoska, is a great friend of mine. And she had reached out to me at the time where I was kind of on a reprieve from Tigers. And she's a brilliant writer, and she's very interested in history. And so she was like, are you interested in anything, historical for musicals? And I had already looked up this person, and I've kind of been like, wouldn't it be funny to write a bio musical about someone who no one knows? And then I went, that's impossible. I put it away. So when she wrote me, I was like, oh, actually, like, let's explore this. Let's see what happens. And so we put the show together over the last few years, and I love working on that. I describe it as like Six Meets American Idiot. It's like very much the tone of it. And we've worked with this just really stunning group of actor musicians who just, the spirits in that room have all been really wonderful. It's a room where there are usually no cisgender men are involved in the performance and development of the piece. We've had a couple every once in a while who have contributed, and we cherish them, but it is a space that just feels very different than a lot of other theatrical spaces I've been in. And so I'm really hopeful about the future of that show. And then also I write a bunch of parody musicals, like satirical parody musicals with my partner on those shows, Edward Precht, who's a playwright. And we have written 2 musicals together called A Very Netflix Christmas Musical, now streaming live, which is about no-nonsense businesswoman Vanessa Hudgens, who hates Christmas, who learns to love Christmas in a small town, thanks to a charming prince. It's very delightful. It's very weird and fun and goofy. And then we also just performed in September a first performance of our musical Amy Adams Wins an Oscar, which will ultimately be a radio musical. So it will be available as soon as I can afford to produce it. But that is, of course, the story of Amy Adams deciding at all costs to win an Oscar. I really love working on that show. It's very heightened. It's like Sunset Boulevardian in its grandiosity. It's like a really fun score to write, and it was really fun to work with. So hopefully those things will be in the world more. And then I do a lot of playwriting. So I was in Ars Nova's play group for the last 3 years and just graduated that. And in playwriting, I think it sounds probably like I've done a lot of heightened, kind of often goofy things or genre things. In playwriting, I've done a lot more exploration of certainly like trans experience storytelling, and that can look like trans people just like living and being involved in any kind of genre and story, and then also issues that are very specific to trans experience. Usually I never deal with, dead naming, misgendering. I think I have one instance of misgendering in everything I do, but I deal with, the outside, what the outside experience. It's never like, oh, being trans is so difficult, or I'm struggling with being trans. It's, the world makes being trans very difficult in different ways of exploring that. So I have a few plays that are very much about people trying to live their lives and not being able to because of their identity. And then also just kind of like being in a Christmas movie and happening to be trans. And then over the last couple years from playwriting, I have pivoted into film and television. So now I'm working more in film and TV, often with trans characters and stories, and that's been really exciting. And I'm very, very thankful for that and for the teams that I've been working on those pieces with. And I love theater, and it's just always been such a huge part of my life. The reach with film and television for getting trans characters into the world, I'm very excited about, because it's just a different scope of being able to access, being able to like get into people's homes and be like, it's great to be trans, and it's sexy, and it's fun, and it's adventurous, and we're in every genre, and sometimes you make our lives miserable. That's been the last couple years more, has been focusing in that. So
I was gonna say, speaking of TV, you worked on the Hunted Encore with one of our previous guests, Ned Donovan. What was that like? Do you find a big difference writing for theater or for TV? Is there a big difference? One easier, harder?
Well, Ned and that team is so fun to work with, because they just understand both genres so well. So they're able to craft for, episodic, for film-based things that feel so musical, which can be really hard. Like, they respect what a musical is so enthusiastically, and Ned is such, an incredibly enthusiastic leader, that makes it really easy to work in that space, because basically it's the changes that are necessary to make it accessible via film are made, and that the storytelling needs tone-wise is really helpful. But I still get to work in theater, where sometimes when you're looking at writing, film or television, there's a hesitancy about musicals, or how are these people going to sing? That's wild. Yeah. But with Hunted, they're just like, no, they're vampires, they're singing, and they're on your computer screen. You got to accept that. So the musicality of that made it just really easy to translate, which made it a really fun and easy score to write. It's rock, it's vampires. In the second season, we had rock, the rock girl band of vampires. I love doing that. I'm always, as Ned knows, always ready for more. And that's the thing, it's a team where you walk in and everyone is just like, if there's a problem, we're gonna solve it, but like, happiness first, health first, like happy room first, energized attitudes, like that is what makes that project so fun. And Ned gave me a lot of agency to kind of do whatever I wanted with that story. And I do a lot of writing my own books and stories, but I really love also kind of just like sending songs in for people. It's one less thing I have to stress over. It's writing. Here's your score, haha, goodbye. More vampires in musical theater.
Well, there was Lestat, the musical, which never went anywhere.
And I did see Dracula with Kelly O'Hara.
There's so many versions of Dracula. I'm not even sure which one that is.
The one was Tom Hewitt. I was 11. It was part of my bar mitzvah trip to New York to see a bunch of shows, and it was on Broadway at the time. It was very.
Was it the Frank Wildhorn version?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so.
I don't know that. I have a French Quebec version of Dracula I play on the station. There's just so many versions. I get them all confused after a while. So
there's a lot. I would do, like, if you ever see like a sexy queer spin on Dracula, that's me dipping my toe in, but probably staying away from that narrative. I'm sure there's plenty of sexy queer Dracula musicals out there.
I have to ask. So, obviously, the pandemic hit everybody. Was there any skills or that you learned that you had to learn over the pandemic that you're going to take forward into the next life of the theater and beyond the pandemic?
I did not have a screenwriting career before the pandemic. My first foray into film was August 2020. So I have learned a lot about pitching film and TV. And the different needs of those mediums, and the different needs and consideration for storytelling for larger audiences or for different networks. I'm still very much learning that, but like pitch decks and different ways you pitch different genres even. That's been just a totally different world. And I was working in a TV staff room, like stuff like that. That's all been in the vein, but like it's a different world, but it's also opened up really for me. Now I have opportunity to look at a story, and where I used to be like, okay, well, I write theater, so how is this going to be theater? Now I can really consider what medium is going to serve the piece best. And then I also built all my furniture in my house. So I think of myself as being a potential IKEA TaskRabbit and like Wayfair TaskRabbit. I'm very proud of that. If we're looking at like technical skills, I did that. As far as like mental health coping, every day we're working on that. as I explained to you before we recorded, I have a vast
Yeah.
tea collection that's, I also work with professionals and then Medicaid, but my tea collection is really the thread by which I hang sometimes.
So if you're in the Chicago area and you need furniture put together or some advice on tea, contact Preston.
I actually really won't put your furniture together, but I'll tell you if I could. I'll be really enthusiastic about it. I'll wish you well.
Well, that's a side hustle. You can make some more money, a little IKEA cash too.
I really could. Also, I could just get out of my house.
That's true.
I'm very isolated in my home. I'm very hypochondriac-y, so it's been a tough time for me and my brethren. So yeah, I do, but luckily I'm also very much an introvert. So I've just been here writing and putting up holiday themed decorations from the $10 section of Target. And then waiting between January and September to put those decorations back up. Between January and September, I'm just waiting for the holidays again.
Why take them down? You've got the entire place, right? Like,
I actually don't I have like lights on my ceiling that if it was a little later, you would see that do stay. I love my fairy lights. They also sparkle. They had some sparkle. You gotta have some sparkle today.
So is it any of the projects that we talked about, do we have anything that the public can see or hear or participate in?
I wish I could talk about the film world stuff, but I cannot.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm hoping the concert that we did of Amy Adams Wins an Oscar is online. We recorded the whole concert. So if anyone's curious about that journey, I think it's on my website, or I'll put it on my website after we're done chatting. So that is something you can see. You can certainly listen to We Are the Tigers. I was going to call it something different. It was not the title. It wasn't at all related. And so that album's out. I really hope, the 355 can, peek more into the world. And this isn't tangential of my writing, but I did release an EP of one of the things in terms of learning a skill, I wanted to work with Logic Pro. All my demos had been like me playing guitar, kind of just like to a voice memo, which is great and fine, but I bought Logic Pro and I really learned instrumentation on it for my demos. So to do that, I recorded 5 punk versions of songs from Phantom of the Opera. And they're a little messy because they were me learning how to use Logic Pro, but I love punk covers of Broadway, like Punk Side Story and Yidcor's Fiddler and Me First and Gimme Gimme, like Jonathan Young. People are out there like doing this and I love it. And I'll take it in any form. Like I'll take it. So I was like, why would I did this. I'm proud of this. I will release this in the form in which it exists for the people who consume it in any form. So if anyone's looking for a punk pop, indie, occasionally kind of emo, 5-track cover album of Phantom of the Opera, it is called Phantom of the Rock Band. And that's on Spotify and Apple Music and YouTube. So that is me promoting my garage band composer demo level Phantom of the Opera covers, for which I don't make money. I pay Andrew Lloyd Webber to be able to do this.
That has got to be the most niche spot on Spotify I've ever heard. Musical theater, Phantom of the Opera, punk. I'm not even sure what hashtag I would use to look that up, but
my favorite, like truly. There's a West Side Story one called Punk Side Story that sounds like they all got blackout drunk and then recorded the score of it in a garage. That's incredible. I recommend that to complement, the listening to of the actual very good professional West Side Story. But yeah, I mean, I come from I don't listen to musicals as much. I listen to a lot of singer-songwriter, a lot of pop punk. Like I never got over Fall Out Boy, and My Chemical Romance was my second most listened to band again this year. So I'm always in that corner of the world. And when they blend together, it's spectacular. It's my favorite genre.
That's awesome.
Someone screaming Evita.
Preston, thank you so much for coming on and talking to me today and letting us know about yourself and the shows and what you've got going on. It sounds like so much fun. And people should check out your website. What is your website again?
PrestonMaxAllen.com. I need to update it. And my mom called me recently and was like, update your website. I forget. I'm just always talking trash on Twitter. I forget I have to be more professional. But I will update that. Also, I do, if anyone's interested in my sheet music is all available by donation. There's cause changes sometimes, but it's always for trans folks in different situations and different organizations. So it's pay what you can donation for my sheet music. So that's on there as well. And happy to sling stuff your way if you'll give a little money to the community.
Nice. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. But before we go, I always ask 3 questions of my guests.
Okay.
Now, there's no right or wrong answer, but we may judge you. So,
okay, great.
As simple as that. We'll start off with an easy one, a nice softball to get things going. What creator or team within musical theater has had a great influence on you? Now, it could be a composer, lyricist, director, producer, actor, even stage manager. Could be somebody famous or not famous, like a teacher. Is there somebody who's had a big influence on you?
Obviously Andrew Lloyd Webber, but let's pocket him. He gets enough recognition. Like on a fanboy level, I really can't get away from the like magic of Aaron's and like when I'm not listening to theater as much, Ragtime pulls me right back in. I've been listening to Ragtime a lot lately. So Aaron and Flaherty and Candor and Ebb were some teams when I was young where I was just I love it. And then it's kind of like a mentor when I was coming into the city for the first time and starting to write, and for up till now, I was working with Robert Hickey a lot, who I love, who did Lightning Thief and has done many wonderful pieces. And so I was always very grateful for his friendship and his guidance, and I'm always very excited for what he's up to. There's so many wonderful artists. So here's the ones who immediately snap to mind. As I trudge around Chicago thinking about musical theater and what I contribute and how I've been influenced. I love the score of Waitress so much too. I would be remiss to not mention Sarah Bareilles has really kept me going some days. The score of Waitress.
You're going to get 1 point for having great answers, but an extra point for mentioning Rob, because I just literally talked to him 3 days ago for an interview. Yep.
I can't wait to listen. Love him.
Yeah. So Rob, 2 points. Congratulations on that. Question number 2. Now, you've written musicals about serial killers, telekinetic killers with Carrie Rage 2, and vampire killers with The Hunted. If you could take any horror movie or horror movie character and turn it into a musical, what might it be?
I'm sure I wrote a song actually that Sean Doherty performed at a concert this last year for the movie Malignant.
Okay.
So it's a new horror movie that just came out. James, if I say James Wan and I'm wrong, I'm gonna feel so embarrassed. But it was Malignant, and I wrote a song for it. The joke was it's this woman who's kind of being haunted by this ghoulish figure, and she doesn't understand why. And I really wanted as a joke to write a song that disconnected from the show could sound as uplifting as You Will Be Found, that I could trick the Broadway community into singing hypothetically, inspirationally, that was secretly from Malignant. So I had a great time writing that song. I'm very happy with how it came out, and I am available for Malignant the musical, which would also be very, very hard. But yeah, I work too closely to Scream and the slashers to directly contribute, but I will also count the film, or the book Ella Enchanted as being YA horror in many ways. And it's my dream to make a gritty musical of Ella Enchanted that honors the horrors that young woman was put through, that I don't think some of the adaptations have honored to the extent to which I was troubled by them as a youth. So yes, Malignant and Ella Enchanted.
Okay. As a side note, how about Hallmark movies with horror themes? Somebody might have been reading your Twitter.
Yes. So on Twitter, I joked about this. I would literally very much do this. Now I might have to. That I want to write a Hallmark movie that, it starts as a Hallmark romance, and it goes for quite a while. You're I am watching a Hallmark romance about two, very attractive, I mean this with love, stock photo-esque people who are falling in love, but then they accidentally just brutally kill someone, and it's disgusting, and they mean well, and they're trying to it's still trying to maintain the Hallmark essence, but while also Breaking Bad level dissolving violent. So that's now my dream. I really love making people think they were watching something for a few minutes that they actually were in fact not watching. So if not this, I did just finish a script that actually does that in a different way. Genre-wise, it is a different film for like 20 minutes and then switches over. So if that one goes well, maybe we'll see my Hallmark one. Although I will say, if I see any movies coming out that are close to that tweet, I could use some more money. I'll sue. I'm ready. Ready.
Okay, I better knock that off my list. Okay, I'm not going to do that now.
Hello, Preston's tweet.
I don't have enough money for lawyer fees. All right, correct answer. One more point. All right, final question, maybe the most revealing of all.
Oh my.
Food in the theater or cell phones in the theater? What is worse?
Cell phones, because food, at least you're paying attention. Like I've been hungry. Like I've snuck a ginger mint or something. Like I've had a tickle in my throat. Obviously, like if it's between like you brought like a full meal, no, like because then I can smell it and I don't want to, like I'd rather you be on your phone than like my senses. But I get really annoyed when people are checking their phones a lot. Like I was at American Utopia last year and someone was doing that, and I will never say anything because I'm so scared of confrontation. But I do get close with phone. It's like the closest I get to being confrontational, like in my life, is being like, look at David Byrne. He is performing for you. So yeah, I think phones.
All right. I would have also accepted both are terrible. So
that's fair, but I've had a protein smoothie during like Jagged Little Bill when I was very hungry. It's a long show.
Oh man. All right, that'll accept. But my problem with the food is they leave garbage on the floor. Like so many people just leave, and it's just, come on. How hard is it to hold on to it and put it in the trash?
That is true. Although I have in my time been known to stock my drawers with cups that people leave.
Yes.
I had the last ship cup. I had an Oklahoma cup. Like I get them and then I wash them. I power wash them. And then, so that is how I was stocking my so I will be partial there.
Congratulations, 4 out of 3 points. Great job. I have no prizes, but you can brag to all your friends.
I'll take it.
Whatever that means.
Now I'm just glad I didn't have a rock. Like, what's the horror movie where you've been like, no, don't adapt that?
That's actually
Clockwork Orange. Like, I wouldn't want to see a musical of Clockwork Orange.
I would, you know what? I kind of would, because I'd take the literal words from the book, which are just baffling and mind-blowing, because it makes no sense. I tried to get through the first page and went, nope, I'm done. Just,
I feel like there's just some things that people think should be musicals that really shouldn't be, and like that's one where I'm like, oh, I'm nervous about what this could turn into. So now I want, like, we'll have an extra where we just brainstorm things that shouldn't be musicals. shut that business down. It's doing too well.
Oh, Preston, thank you so much for coming on and talking to me and entertaining me today, and telling us a little bit about yourself. And you know what, if you ever have anything going on, let us know. We'll help promote it and promote you,
Thank you so much.
We need more people in the business, who are passionate. So awesome. So we were just speaking with Preston Max Allen, the creator of the musical We Are the Tigers and a number of other great shows that they're working on. Tune in next week as we'll be speaking with another guest or guests about their life, love, and passion that is musical theater. I am your host, as always, Jean-Paul Jovanov. And until next time, I'll see you when I see you.